In this tutorial, we will be demonstrating how easy it is to auto-disconnect idle sessions within your virtual desktop environment using the VDI ToolKit. We will also look at some of the alternatives and their associated pitfalls. Lastly, we will demonstrate how the VDI ToolKit overcomes those pitfalls. Why should we disconnect idle sessions? First, this can have a significant impact on security within an organization. In organizations with a lot of moving people logging into multiple clients throughout the organization, there is sometimes a tendency for users to just walk away from a client actively logged into a virtual desktop session. This is a security issue, as someone can then walk up and utilize that session that is logged in as someone else. This could be problematic in many scenarios. An example could be a hospital that has an electronic medical record. A user that just walked up and started using someone else's session would in turn be charting within that electronic medical record as the other user. This could be a major HIPAA concern within the healthcare setting. Walking away from an active session can be even more problematic if done by a remote worker working from home or off-site. In that scenario, it could create a significant security threat, as someone not employed by the organization could possibly gain access to sensitive information. Another reason to disconnect idle sessions is to reduce license utilization. An active concurrent session is utilizing a license, so by disconnecting an active idle session, you are in turn reducing the number of concurrent licenses used by your virtual desktop platform. Another issue many organizations find is that sometimes users will lock their screen from a zero client. Not only does this keep an active session going, but when another user may come to work at the same client, they may have to power cycle the client to disconnect the active session if the client doesn't have a hotkey to disconnect active sessions. Furthermore, this locked screen maintains an active state, in turn consuming a license. Lastly, by disconnecting active idle sessions, you may free infrastructure resources being utilized to maintain that active session. Although there are other solutions like using specialized screensavers to disconnect idle sessions, they are often limited and narrow. They are usually narrow in scope and have to be set globally. Lastly, these also do not work when the session is in a locked state. Let's talk about why using the VDI ToolKit is superior. First, it uses a robust rules engine that allows different idle timers based off of any virtual desktop session variable. This rules engine allows you to create a default idle timer and then create specialized timers for unique scenarios, like user, virtual desktop hostname, client, whether the session is external or internal, to name a few. Lastly, the VDI ToolKit works even if the session is in a locked state. Up next, we will demonstrate managing automatic disconnect of idle sessions using the VDI ToolKit. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So what we'll want to do is go ahead and create a rule for our idle monitor, and we'll do that by going into the management console, and I have that running on a virtual desktop. We'll go ahead and open up the management console. And once the management console is open, I'll go ahead and expand that. And we'll want to navigate to Rules, Session Rules, Idle Monitor. And we'll see that currently we have no rules. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add a rule by giving it a name and a description. And we'll go ahead and check global rule because we want this to apply to all virtual desktop sessions. Once we do that, we'll hit add. And once we hit add, the edit window will open and we can go ahead and navigate to configuration and give it a configuration. So for this demonstration purpose, I'll go ahead and just set it to 1 minute and we'll go ahead and update that. And then afterwards we can do a search and see that our rule was created right here. So now what we'll want to do is go ahead and test the rule, and we'll do that by actually logging into a virtual desktop session. So I'll go ahead and minimize this, and we'll go ahead and log in. Okay, once logged into the virtual desktop, we'll want to make sure that that rule applied, and we'll do that by actually navigating to the client in the sys tray. We'll go ahead and left click on the client, and then we'll go to rules, and we will expand session monitoring rules. And then we'll see that we have one idle monitor rule. I'll go ahead and expand that. If we highlight our mouse over, we can get details about the rule. And if we expand that, we can actually see what our timer is set for. So right now it's set for after being idle for 1 minute, that it will disconnect the virtual desktop session. Now to test this, what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead just to show that it works with the lock screen. I'm going to go ahead and lock the screen. So we'll go ahead and lock that. Now that that's locked, it should disconnect in 1 minute of being idle. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and wait a minute, and I'll fast forward the video so you can actually see it disconnect the session. Okay, as we can see, it automatically disconnected the session after 1 minute of being idle, even with the screen locked. So next, what we want to do is, let's say this particular user that we're logging in with, we don't want it to be the default time. We want it to be extended or something along those lines. So what we'll want to do is go ahead and create another rule. So we can navigate back here to the management console, and we can go ahead and create a new rule. So we'll give it a name and a description, and this time, since we want to, in this scenario, since we only want it to apply to a specific user, we're not going to check global rule. So we'll go ahead and hit add. Once we hit add, the edit window will open, and now we can see that we have qualifiers since it's not a global rule. Please note, for more information on rule qualifiers and how those work, please watch the tutorial on rules. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add any qualifier, and we'll add the user that we've been logging in with. And right here we have that, which is the VDI ToolKit user. We'll go to configuration. We'll go ahead and just set this to 5 minutes instead of 1 minute like the default rule. We'll also want to change the weight of the rule. So the default rule's weight was 0. We'll want to go ahead and give this a higher weight so it overrides that rule. So we'll go ahead and highlight, and I'll change that to 1. We'll go ahead and hit update. And once we hit update, I can search and see that our rule's been created. So now what we want to do is test this specialized rule by going ahead and logging into a virtual desktop. So I'll go ahead and minimize this. And we will go ahead and log in. Okay, once logged into the virtual desktop, we want to make sure that the correct rule applied, and we can do that by navigating to the sys tray and opening up the client. So we'll left click on the client, we'll navigate to rules, and we will expand session monitoring, and we will notice now that we have 2 idle monitor rules. I'll go ahead and expand that. We'll see both of our rules, and if we expand the default rule, we'll notice now that it has a red X. And if we highlight over it, it tells us why it was ignored. And that red X means it was not applied. And it's telling us that it's due to another idle monitor rule that has a higher priority. And we can go ahead and expand our specialized idle monitor and see that it's now configured and set to 5 minutes before it disconnects. I hope this tutorial has been useful, and thank you.